In the ruthless theater of human nature, Niccolò Machiavelli stood as a shadowy observer of power, vulnerability, and control. From his vantage point in the political chaos of Renaissance Italy, he learned that weakness, true weakness, is not always loud or trembling. Often, it wears a mask of civility, pretends to be kindness, and hides behind excuses. But to the trained eye, to the strategist, to the one who studies men as a chessboard rather than a morality play, weakness is never truly hidden. It bleeds through in subtle behaviors, betrayals of a man's inner fortress. And so Machiavelli, were he to walk the streets of our modern world, would observe with a calculating eye. He would not be fooled by shiny suits, confident postures, or loud declarations. No, he would look deeper. He would search for these 10 behaviors that instantly expose weak men, regardless of the time, culture, or age. Weak men do not always fall to their knees in obvious submission. Many stand tall with brutal pride, hiding fractures beneath the surface. Yet each of the following behaviors, dissected through a Machiavellian lens, reveals something more damning than failure. A mind unfortified, a spirit without command, a soul that is not sovereign over itself. Behavior 1. Over-apologizing and seeking constant validation. The man who constantly apologizes, not for grand sins, but for simply existing or expressing himself, is a man who has surrendered the throne of his own mind. He tiptoes in his conversations, not out of wisdom, but from fear. Machiavelli would say, "The man who seeks approval is already ruled." A sovereign man understands diplomacy, yes, but his words are not bent by the winds of others' feelings. He speaks with calculated weight, not with trembling lips. Weak men, on the other hand, chase the applause of others as though validation were oxygen. They post for likes, beg for forgiveness they do not owe, and edit their identities to avoid the slightest disapproval. This is not humility. It is spiritual enslavement. And Machiavelli knew, no prince, no ruler, no man of power ever begged to be liked. He demanded to be respected. Behavior 2. Inability to say no. A man who cannot say no is not a man. He is a servant in disguise. He smiles when uncomfortable, agrees when his gut screams otherwise, and offers time he cannot afford to lose. Such men are praised as generous, even loving. But look closer. Underneath the smiles and nods is a soul eroded by compromise. Machiavelli taught that boundaries are not walls of cruelty, but fortresses of self-respect. The man who draws no lines invites invasion. The man who fears confrontation has already lost the war of life. Weakness is not always visible in shouts. Sometimes, it whispers in every silent surrender. Behavior 3. Emotional reactivity. The man who angers you controls you. This is not just a quote. It is Machiavellian wisdom distilled. Weak men are leaves in the wind of their emotions. They react, explode, cry out, or implode, but they do not govern. They lack the calm cruelty of control. A strong man, in contrast, watches, analyzes, and then moves with precision. Machiavelli would see emotional reactivity not as honesty, but as undisciplined chaos. He would note how enemies need only press a button to detonate such men. In politics, business, or romance, the man who cannot keep his temper cannot be trusted with influence. Behavior 4. Oversharing and needless vulnerability. In an age that worships transparency, the weak man mistakes vulnerability for virtue. He shares wounds to gain sympathy, confesses fears as a currency for closeness, and exposes his inner chaos as though it were a badge of honor. But Machiavelli would frown. To reveal your heart is to hand over a weapon to those who may one day wish to pierce it. The art of power is mystery, not confession. The strong man does not hide in fear. He cloaks in strategy. His silence is not coldness, but calculation. Weak men believe that to be loved, they must be fully known. But Machiavelli knew, to be revered, one must remain partially unknowable. Behavior 5. Victim mentality. Nothing repels power like the stench of self-pity. The weak man speaks in the language of injustice. Life is unfair. They never gave me a chance. I always get used. These are the hymns of the powerless. Machiavelli, immersed in the ruthless politics of Florence, knew that victimhood is a strategy only when it masks a dagger. Weak men make suffering their identity. Strong men suffer, then sharpen themselves with the pain. Weakness is not in being wounded. It is in worshiping the wound. Behavior 6. People-pleasing at the expense of self. People-pleasing is cowardice disguised as kindness. The weak man trades authenticity for acceptance, truth for peace, strength for popularity. He becomes what others want, hoping to earn love he has not claimed within himself. Machiavelli would scoff. He taught that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Not because fear is noble, but because respect built on strength lasts longer than love built on performance. The people-pleaser is not generous. He is terrified of being disliked. And so, he bends until he breaks. Behavior 7. Lack of direction and purpose. The man without purpose is a ship without a sail. He drifts, waiting for motivation, chasing trends, mimicking men who seem sure of themselves. His life is a collage of distractions, not decisions. He numbs with entertainment, postpones with excuses, and dies long before he stops breathing. Machiavelli would brand such a man as a liability to himself and others. A man without purpose is easily ruled, easily seduced, and easily broken. Power respects those who are rooted in mission. Weakness leaks from those who have not asked. Why am I here? Behavior 8. Obsession with external status symbols. Luxury cars, designer clothes, flashy watches. These are not marks of strength. They are often compensations. Weak men decorate their emptiness. They hope that status will buy them the admiration they do not command naturally. Machiavelli understood the theater of appearance. Yes, a ruler must sometimes appear grand, but never let the appearance replace the substance. Weak men cling to image because they have no internal identity. They chase recognition instead of mastering themselves. Behavior 9. Dependency on others for emotional stability. The man who needs constant support, validation, and emotional handholding is not a partner. He is a burden. He transfers responsibility for his well-being to others, then blames them for his collapse. Machiavelli valued independence above comfort. A prince, a leader, a man of worth must be self-sustaining. His emotions are his to manage. Weakness reveals itself when a man cannot stand alone in storm or sunshine. Behavior 10. Fear of being alone. The final, perhaps most tragic behavior is the fear of solitude. The weak man rushes into relationships, not out of love, but out of panic. He surrounds himself with noise to silence his thoughts. He fills his calendar to avoid reflection. Alone, he feels worthless. Machiavelli knew that solitude is the crucible of strength. It is where a man meets his shadow, wrestles his demons, and emerges either forged or fractured. The man who cannot be alone cannot be free. And freedom, above all, is the foundation of power. Final thoughts. Machiavelli did not romanticize man. He saw us as creatures of ambition, fear, love, betrayal, and power. He knew that strength is not in muscle or in voice, but in the unseen architecture of one's mind and decisions. These 10 behaviors are not just habits. They are symptoms. Symptoms of a man who has not claimed his own sovereignty. And in the eyes of Machiavelli, such men are not neutral. They are dangerous, not to others, but to themselves. Because in the grand game of power, strategy, and legacy, weakness is not forgiven. It is exploited. So, if you find even one of these behaviors within yourself, do not despair. But also do not delay. Kill the weakness before it kills your potential. Build the fortress. Command your kingdom. And never forget, the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Niccolò Machiavelli. Now ask yourself, what kind of man surrounds you? More importantly, What kind of man lives within you?